and I am a teacher. I've always loved the idea of helping others, and I've poured my heart into teaching. It was a dream come true for me to be married to Ethan. We met while I was still in college, and it felt like fate brought us together. We'd laugh at how easy it was to talk, how everything just seemed to fall into place. We were married for 5 years before things started to change. In the beginning, our life together was filled with joy, with laughter, and the sense of being in love. Every day felt new, with every moment shared with Ethan being meaningful. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine, and I was happy. Or so I thought. The first hint that something was wrong came slowly, almost imperceptibly. Ethan's work schedule had always been demanding, but over time, the late nights began to increase. I tried to tell myself that it was just the pressure of his job as a software developer. After all, I knew that being in the tech industry meant long hours and tight deadlines. But there was something else. The way he would rush out of the house in the evenings, the secrecy about his phone, and the way he would pull away when I asked him what he had been doing. I brushed it off. It must have been nothing. One evening, after a particularly quiet dinner, Ethan left the house without saying much. As usual, he grabbed his phone and went out the door. I went to clean up the kitchen, my thoughts slowly creeping back to his odd behavior. I didn't plan on snooping, but the curiosity gnawed at me. I picked up his phone, and to my horror, a message popped up. The name Emily was at the top of the screen, and the message read, "Can't wait to see you, Emily." My heart stopped. Who was Emily? And why was she sending my husband such intimate messages? I tried to stay calm, hoping that it was something innocent, but deep down, I knew this wasn't right. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept racing, turning over the small things I had ignored. The way Ethan had become increasingly secretive, how he'd been coming home later than usual, and the strange distance between us. I had spent so many years with him, yet suddenly I was a stranger in my own marriage. The next morning, I told myself that I was overreacting. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Perhaps I had just stumbled upon something innocuous. But deep inside, I knew I couldn't ignore this any longer. The days that followed were filled with awkward silences. Ethan's behavior became more and more erratic. He would lock his phone when he wasn't using it, and whenever I asked him about work, he would give short, dismissive answers. I felt like I was walking on eggshells around him. Was I being paranoid? Was I just imagining things? One evening, after he left for another one of his late-night meetings, I found a receipt in his coat pocket when I was hanging it up in the closet. It was from an expensive restaurant in the city. The date matched up with the night he had told me he was working late. When I questioned him about it, he brushed it off, saying it was a business dinner. But the lies didn't sit right with me. I couldn't let this go anymore. I couldn't let my own insecurities dictate how I viewed my marriage, but I also couldn't ignore the sinking feeling in my gut. The next day, I made a decision. I was going to find out the truth, no matter how painful it was. I knew I had to confront Ethan, but instead of doing it directly, I decided to gather more evidence first. I knew it wasn't the best idea, but I couldn't shake the need for certainty. One day, I waited until Ethan went into the bathroom, and then I quickly opened his laptop. His email inbox was already open, and my eyes caught the first line of an email from Emily. "Every moment with you feels special. I can't imagine my life without you." I froze. My hands were shaking as I read the message. The words felt like a stab to the chest. How could he do this to me? My husband, the man I trusted more than anyone, was betraying me. I slammed the laptop shut and collapsed on the couch. Tears filled my eyes, and the world seemed to collapse around me. ceiling, wrestling with my emotions. The next morning, I finally decided that I had no choice but to talk to him. I had to know the truth. So, I did what I had never done before. I confronted Ethan, demanding to know who Emily was and why he had been lying to me. His reaction was what I expected. He looked surprised at first, almost confused, as though he didn't understand why I was so upset. "Emily is an old friend," he said, his voice calm. "You're blowing this out of proportion." I wanted to believe him. I really did. But his words felt empty. Everything about the situation felt wrong, and I couldn't ignore the obvious lies anymore. The confrontation left me feeling numb. That night, I went to bed, not knowing what to expect. I wanted to believe Ethan, but I knew I couldn't continue to live in a relationship built on lies. The following evening, I decided to follow him. I didn't know exactly where he was going, but I had to know. If I was being paranoid, I'd face it. If not, I needed to find out the truth. I watched from a distance as he pulled up to a luxurious restaurant in the city. I could see him through the window, sitting at a candlelit table with a woman. The woman was smiling at him, and he was holding her hands, laughing in a way he hadn't laughed with me in months. My heart shattered. It was as if the floor beneath me had disappeared. I had known, but seeing it with my own eyes felt like a betrayal I couldn't ever undo. I left the restaurant without another word. I didn't want him to know I had seen him. There was no point in confronting him again. The next day, I packed my bags. Ethan was still at work, and I didn't want to wait for him to come home. I wasn't sure where I would go, but I knew I couldn't stay. When he walked through the door that evening, I was waiting by the door with my suitcase in hand. He stood there, looking confused as I spoke. "I loved you," I said, my voice trembling. "I truly did, but I can't live like this. I can't stay in a relationship where I'm not being treated with respect. I deserve more than this." He didn't say anything. No apology. No explanation. It was like he knew deep down that it was too late to fix things. Maybe he didn't even want to. I walked out that night, feeling like the weight of the world had been lifted off my shoulders. I was devastated, yes, but there was also a sense of relief. I knew I had made the right choice, and now it was time for me to move on. I left the house that night, unsure of where I would go, but certain that I couldn't stay with someone who didn't value me. Since then, I found peace in my own company. I'm rediscovering who I am, beyond the identity of being someone's wife. Sometimes, the hardest decision we make is the one that frees us, and I've learned that no matter how hard it is to let go, it's better to be alone than to be with someone who doesn't appreciate you. Today, I live in a new city, surrounded by new faces and new experiences. It hasn't been easy, but it has been worth it. I've learned so much about myself and what I truly deserve. So, if you ever find yourself stuck in a situation like mine, remember, your happiness matters. Your self-respect matters. You deserve to be treated with kindness, honesty, and love. Never settle for less. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like and subscribe for more real-life stories.